Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian. Joining me, as always, is your co-host, Jim.
Is it I'm chipping in, Jack, or is it I'm jacking in, Chip?
I don't know. Is that from Cyberpunk? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't played
I've had a bit of Cyberpunk in the last week.
A bit? How many hours have you put into it so far?
I don't know. I'm pushing 40 probably.
Not bad. You must like it.
But I'm doing an incredible amount of screwing around and just standing around and looking at things and reading like all the little pamphlets that you pick up. So I haven't made tremendous progress, but I've made tremendous observation.
Oh, I went 30 hours before even getting Tact 2. Because what? I was spending that much time doing side stuff. Yeah, you can totally do that.
Wait, getting what? Getting what was
side stuff, side quests.
Oh.
Side quests knocked out. Yeah.
Oh,
getting Skippy, the sentient smart gun, which talks to you during combat.
I still think my favorite gun is the screaming gun from Borderlands 2. That's probably still my favorite gun ever.
They need one that screams like a goat.
Kinda.
Call it Gun of the Year, goat, and it goes. Aah!
Kinda. Yeah. Also, your co-host Spaz right there, and your co-host Hunter.
Hello.
Friends, we have a guest this week joining us, coming back for, I believe, his third time on the show from Houston, Texas, the head of Cat Hawk Games, Stephen Hawkins. Welcome back.
Thank you. Third time's a charm, I guess.
I always love having people
try to be charming.
Huh? Sorry, what was that?
We try to be charming.
I always do love welcoming people back. It means they were a good guest and we like having them back. So it's always nice to welcome someone back. Friends, we are here to return to the topic of Alliance of the Sacred Sons. What used to be called, if I remember correctly, Imperia 5X. Am I remembering that right?
Yes. Well, really just Imperia. And then we gave it the 5X as sort of a way to differentiate the type of game it was.
Right.
So we changed the name once there's another game out there, or there was a game, Imperia, that was kind of a mobile game that they weren't too happy about sharing the name. So we decided just to find a different name.
Well, it's kind of funny you went from one word to, you went from like one side of the spectrum with one word to a much longer title on the other side of the spectrum. I just think that's funny.
Your people will remember at least one of the words.
And one of them is not void.
Oh, thank God.
Right.
Thank God.
We're not Emperor of the Fading Suns. We have no affiliation with Emperor of the Fading Suns. And we're not the same company that made Emperor of the Fading Suns. I get that question at least once a week somewhere.
Really?
I really do. It's funny. And I mean, there are elements. I mean, there are houses and an
there's a similar vibe. There's definitely a similar vibe.
I could have Andrew here in 2 clicks.
Yeah, Andrew's
click on it, and then you could officially license Fading Suns.
No, Andrew is great, but let's not rope him into this. I think we've had him on twice now. Now he is great, but I could kind of see where people would get confused because it has a similar vibe, kind of a future dystopian, kind of grand strategy thing, but ultimately very different games.
It was the best space game ever, and now we have the best space game ever. So it's very similar, right?
Oh, I love Emperor of the Fading Suns. The major difference is the ground combat. I mean, in Emperor of the Fading Suns, you're basically taking over worlds, one world at a time, and you're almost like a civilization type game on the ground. Yeah. And the space game is pretty bare bones by comparison.
It's very abstracted. Very abstracted.
Yeah. It's like I don't even know what to call the space game in that, but it's kind of like 40K in space and
I don't even know if
be on the ground.
It reminds me of the Command and Conquer map system where you just move from location to location with your with your forces, and then you do the ground mission there.
Yeah, it's kind of Hex war game thing,
kind of a meta map thing.
You know what I do like about it though is in in Star Wars, right? With what was that called? Empire at War, right? Or Galaxy at War.
Empire at War. You got it.
Empire at War. In Empire at War, when you would do ground battles, it was like, hey, let me randomly generate an RTS fight. But that little RTS thing like symbolizes like an invasion of the whole planet kind of thing. And here, at least, it was like, okay, there's multiple cities and you have to think about like where you're going to land your stuff and like who's defending what city. Is kind of reminded me actually of Panzer General a little bit, which is in the same flavor as like Warhammer Armageddon, because Warhammer Armageddon is Panzer General. It's a secret.
Or those old Warhammer SSI games. Similar vibe there too. Yeah. But I could see why you would. Well, I could honestly see why people might get confused on first blush. Like, does this have anything to do with Emperor of the Fading Suns? Because people are. Let's be the last thing we say about Emperor of the Fading Suns. People are really dying for a game like that still. And
yes, Andrew, if you're listening, hint, nudge.
It's
we
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I'm just saying, we've tried to make something unique.
No, you have that. No, you totally have. I'm not comparing your game to Emperor of the Fading Suns. But
okay, so it was Alliance to the Sacred Sons.
Alliance of the Sacred Sons. No, it was Imperia, and now it's Alliance of the Sacred Sons.
Okay. Yeah. So a quick history of this game, because it spans 6 years. Essentially, I'm a self-taught programmer. My full-time career was in retail management. So I've always had a hobby of programming, right? And, it's just kind of a dream game I'd always wanted to make, kind of a 4X, but where you interact a lot more with the characters, kind of a 4X meets Crusader King type vibe. But where in Crusader King, the characters actually talked back and had personalities and actually had speech. So, I kind of started working on a predecessor, and it was called Imperia, and it was actually using Visual Basic and using XML, or XMA, sorry. And it got to a point where, this is pretty cool. I might share it with some people, and it was always a free product. And I put it on GitHub and a few other places, and just people could kind of check it out. And it kind of got a little bit of a following. And so I kind of expanded it, worked on it a little bit. And then had some people that wanted to contribute art. And it just kind of grew to the point where, I really can't do much more with it, because XMA is kind of a dying toolkit. They're not really supporting it.
That was like the Xbox thing, right? That was like Xbox arcade type thing.
Yeah. XMA is it doesn't even stand for anything. It's just kind of an engine, a game engine, but it's not really supported well. So a couple years ago, I made the decision. You know what? If I want to do something with this game, I need to find a better engine, probably find a better language. So I taught myself C#. I moved to Unity, and I started basically from scratch. And it was kind of nice because it gave us a chance to change some things and refine some things and create a better backstory. But long story short, we kind of got into the name when it got big enough to where the name kind of got around. We were contacted by the other Imperia to say, hey, we were here first. We have a copyright. So it's like, no big deal. We'll just come up with it. We'll call Alliance of the Sacred Sons. Actually, one day I'll find a name, but it really does reflect the game, because the ultimate goal is to create an alliance. So the idea basically is that humanity built a Stargate 1,000 years ago based on plans that came from a meteorite from space. And the meteorite fell in the 1950s, but we weren't advanced enough to build it. So it kind of lay in state for about 100 years until we could build it. So once we built the Stargate, we started traveling through it. But the Stargate was kind of a red herring, because it gated in a species called the Zill. The idea being that if a species was intelligent enough to decipher the plans and build the gate, then they were intelligent enough to basically have materials worth their time and basically overrun their planet because they're kind of like energy feeders, kind of like the dredge, I guess. So yeah, so it's like a beacon.
I'd read that novel. Why don't you make? Yeah, I would read that. I would really read that novel. Seriously.
Well, it's kind of got a long backstory with it. We got a timeline and everything, but essentially, so they got some settlers through the Stargate before Earth was destroyed, and then they went to kind of a far part of the Milky Way galaxy where it kind of rebuilt. And about 500 years later, what had then become the Terran Federation, and then basically had to fight off a second attack by the Zill. And I actually have a board game based on that. It's called Star Requiem. You can find it on Board Game Geek. It's a free print and play. So I thought about maybe including it as like a giveaway with the Kickstarter, but it's kind of an earlier. It's not my best work. It's just kind of something I was doodling with. But
what's it called again? I'm gonna link to that.
Star Requiem.
Star Requiem board game. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you can. All the files are there. You can print and play. My biggest opportunity as a game designer has always been creating complex systems and then not adequately telling people how to play them. So that was, even though I wrote like a 50-page instruction manual, we still had people, messaging, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to play. I think it's actually pretty straightforward. I say that as someone that's played like Avalon Hill games since I was 10. Anyway, so it was a draw. We basically introduced the virus into the Zill, so it kind of headed them off for a while. But the Terran Alliance kind of collapsed because a lot of the outlying systems were taken over by the Zill. And so it kind of retreated into this core systems. And then that was basically became the Celestial Alliance. And it was created, and then houses kind of took over and kind of arose. And there became, one ruling house and 5 great houses that kind of shared rule of the empire. So it's essentially now where you're at in 3050, you are the child emperor. You just turned 18. Your majority, your father passed away, and your Grand Vizier had the regency, and the empire is in pretty bad shape. The great houses basically are looking to take over. Definitely some Dune vibes there. And your goal, the Zill are coming. You have kind of a psychic link that they're coming back to finish the job. And there's kind of a whole backstory, which I won't spoil here, but there's a lot more than just, evil aliens come to kill humans. There's a pretty complex story behind it. But basically, your role is to reunite the empire, find the fallen civilizations of humanity that have kind of been scattered around the quadrant, and build the empire into a force strong enough to defeat the Zill, either militarily or scientifically, without dying. If you die, the game's over. Very important point. and that's kind of a big deal because and really no other 4X. And what's funny, what amuses me is there were no games whatsoever that focused on the Emperor. Like when I started making the game 4 or 5 years ago, every 4X out there, you were kind of a gray, omniscient, leader, kind of the gray eminence, and you didn't really. I mean, you might have had a portrait, they might have called you Emperor or whatever, but you really had no presence in the game. And so that was one of the things that I always wanted. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you were an actual person, you had skills and you had traits, and it was almost like an RPG. Imagine an RPG and a 4X mashed up, where your character could sort of, improve skills, kind of like the Total War games, where you have your clan leader and you kind of can gain skills throughout. You gain abilities and items, and it doesn't really go that far because it's not an RPG. But it to me, making that person important is critical to me. So that was kind of always the guiding force, is the idea that you played a person in the game. You had, you had feelings, you had, honor and humanity and certain traits, and you could kind of write your own story. So, but what's funny, and I come back to that, is when I started, there were no games like that at all. And now there's there's easily 3 or 4 games now that are either in development or already out that now have, kind of a Dynasty Emperor kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, anybody ripped anybody off, but I just think it's funny that has become more of a niche now, because, and I'd like to think that maybe we called some attention to that because to me, that's been a big blind spot in 4X games.
It really has. I mean, I think you, and if we go back further, Star Wars Rebellion, really, amazing. But they're the only like games up until like when you started that have scratched that particular itch. Every other 4X game is like you're some omniscient admiral emperor thing who just moves ships and everything and builds everything. And
ships too. Isn't that amazing? You do all the lab work, you do all the design, you have the war plan, you run the economy. I mean, you're like a communist dream.
I tell people going back to Emperor of the Fang Sons, if that game had been allowed to be finished, that would be the one people would be cloning to this day, not Master of Orion 2. But what are you gonna do? So yeah, there definitely is a need for more character-driven strategy games, and there are some, but they're more usually like fantasy, like when you're a king simulator, and they're usually like medieval or fantasy king simulator. There was one we played on the stream a few months ago. Spaz, do you remember the name of that one?
You're thinking Northgard, probably.
No. It was a king simulator, and you're a king, and you're walking around your castle. Okay. And you're talking to your daughters. Yes, Your Grace.
Yes, Your Grace is the one you're thinking of.
Yeah, there are more games like that where it's more of the medieval or fantasy style king simulator. There really isn't much of this in the. I can only think of one other game doing this. It's Stellar Monarch. That's the only other one I can think of.
And that's a great game. You know, Glenn is doing something different. It's kind of the same niche, but his game is more about storytelling. It's really more about, he focuses very, very much on the characters and the 4X elements are maybe not as pronounced. It's really more about telling the story. Yeah. So, you can go about it 2 different ways, but that's a great game. I definitely recommend it. I'd hit back menu because they both, the adventure started. Remember, and keep in mind, anybody watching this is still a pre-alpha.
Yeah, so, of course.
I'm not saying it's going to crash every 5 minutes or anything, but it should be pretty stable. But you may see some wonkiness, and that's one reason. Kickstarter.
I think the only wonkiness I saw was after I stopped recording. There might have been a little bit when I was recording, but like there was some UI element that like got really big and took up a quarter of the screen while I was playing.
You dreaded null reference then somewhere. Yeah, somewhere. But yeah, it's. I recommend if you want to start a campaign, the tutorial which you were doing, and one thing we're going to be doing is really redoing the tutorial. We're going to be focusing more on the guided experience as opposed to the kind of what do you call it? Hand holding, I guess you could say.
Well, I like the tutorial for that reason, because your game is pretty complex and there's a lot going on. And I thought the tutorial honestly did a really great job of laying the foundation, because I played a bunch. I played for like another hour after I stopped recording this because I didn't want to spoil anything for anybody. And besides that one like UI glitch I just mentioned, I had a great time, trying to make projects happen and make more people like me. In every game I play, I'm like, I want everyone to like me and everyone to be happy. And so that was what I
actually had a really funny experience when I was doing a stream. I do 3 streams a week for our Kickstarter on Twitch, and I do an hour. I was doing 2 hours, and I was running into a situation where I was trying really hard to get Waldegrave happy with me because they're a militant house, and you don't want them on your bad side. You just don't. So I would give them all the projects. I would give all their people, if there was a project or an event, or if they needed something that came to me saying, I need money. Like, sure, take it all. But what ended up happening is my own house successor became furious. Like, all the people in my house started hating me because I was basically locking them out of everything. And so that's hard to do, because your house starts, obviously you have a nice bonus to, your initial relationships, but I was completely ignoring him for like 5 years and locking him out of everything. And my house leader kept warning me like, hey, you might want to get us involved in some of this stuff. So finally, my house successor popped up and said, I demand you recognize my rule to all the galaxy. And I said, nah, piss off. So that was the end of that stream, but I look forward to tomorrow when I pick that one up. But it's just kind of fun because the game is designed to tell emergent stories. I mean, yes, it's a 4X, but it was just funny how that kind of happened. In the relationships you have with the houses, people already have kind of their own favorite and least favorite houses. And, we're actually going to have bespoke house leaders in the early access version. Right now, they're kind of pre-generated, but you'll have house leaders. So if you have, say, Waldegrave, you'll have the same person. So you'll kind of get to either love or hate them because they'll have a very specific personality. So now the characters will vary in their roles and obviously everything else around them, but the houses themselves and their leaders will stay the same. So you can kind of get a sense of continuity and kind of feel that you're, competing, because really you are. The game is weird in that you're not competing against alien races like in a typical 4X. You're actually kind of competing against your other houses, but at the same time you're not, because in order for the Empire to survive, you kind of have to all pull in the same direction. So it's kind of a very unique balancing act between, you said you get everybody to like you. You can't make every house like you. You can make them like you at gunpoint, but you can't make them all, because if you like one house, they'll have a relationship with other houses. And the more attention you give one house, their house enemies will start hating you more, because you're basically helping out their enemy, or at least their rival or tensionable other house. So it's very Dune-ish in that respect. The Great House, we've taken a few surveys about what people like about the game, and time again, number one is always the Great Houses. An Emperor obviously is way up there, and then the scripted events are up there, but the Great Houses are always at the either very top or number two, which I think is really cool, because that's really a foundation of the game. You should feel like you're playing against, you're trying to keep this empire together, but you're also fighting against these houses. And so the choice you have to make early on, and that's where, the grand strategy is, what houses do I need to make friends with? And you just usually have to pick one or two and say, okay, these are the houses I need. Maybe they're good at mining. Maybe they're good at farming. Maybe they're good at the military. Maybe they're good at science, and you don't have any academies. But you have to decide for your particular empire that's been generated, because they always change. They always have different problems. What houses do I need at my back? Because the other houses are probably not going to like that too much. And so you're inevitably going to have to deal with a schism in your empire.
Great. I mean, we have an alien invasion impending, and we have to deal with our own internal crap. That's great.
You mean in the game or for real?
They don't know it yet. That's the thing. They don't know that's happening. So, like I say, that's kind of a whole game mode that's going to be added. But the idea is that they gradually make them more aware. You have kind of an awareness level, and you have to try and prove that this is happening, because they're not going to believe you if you just cry alien every time. Like has happened a few times over the past 500 years, they get kind of jaded. So that's kind of a whole, that's one of the only main system that's really not in the game yet, along with the other fallen civilizations that you have to discover and you meet and hopefully integrate into the Empire. Sorry.
Oh, so they're going to be minor and fallen civilizations in the game, as well as yours, as your great houses and everything, as well as your empire?
Yeah. So you have 6 major cultures, and those form, when you built your own house, you got to pick from those 6 prime cultures, and those are what are called inner ring cultures. And then you have middle ring cultures and outer ring cultures, and those are cultures that have, the outer ring cultures are almost borderline alien, because they've been separated from humanity for over 500 years. And so the middle ring cultures have some occasional contact with the inner ring being essentially the empire. But they're kind of started to drift, and you have some cultural differences. You have some language differences. But the outer ring cultures almost could be considered almost an offshoot of humanity, almost a different species, because of the time that's passed between the Second Zil War, and they kind of lost all contact. So you had a significant culture drift and significant genetic drift.
Wow. But you can rediscover and try and reconnect with these lost.
You can try. Keyword. They don't automatically just come back open arms, because remember, these were, if you play the board game, you would understand. But the idea is that you can't defend every. You had outer, middle, and inner systems, and the outer systems were usually the ones that got fallen from the Zil first. And if you try to defend them too much, you basically risk having your middle and inner systems taken over. So, the timeline assumes that a lot of the outer systems fell, and they fell because the Terran Federation decided to let them fall. And so those cultures and those systems never forgave the Federation for that. And so they don't necessarily know there's now a new Celestial Empire, but they're not going to necessarily come open arm. Now, some will, because they've been out in the back beyond for a long time, depending on their culture. Some of them will see you as a savior. They'll bring back technology and other things, but some won't want anything to do with you, and they may even go to war with you because they're still upset about what happened.
Oh, that's cool. That kind of is reminiscent of Traveler of old.
Oh, Traveler.
Like,
boy, you know, that's the first RPG I ever played. I played it on Atari 800 ST. Like, for real. Mega Traveler.
Yeah.
The Donnie Conspiracy. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I played that one too. Thing that I can't remember what it was that happened in Traveler where like there was a collapse of some sort, right? So we had this interstellar empire, and then the empire collapsed, and then humans like got warp travel back, but because the worlds had been isolated from each other for so long that they all like turned into their own independent worlds instead, those that survived it. And there's like various levels of civilization. Like some places are Mad Max looking.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of has that vibe. You know, it's a very desperate future, and that's something that we really wanted to try to convey to the player. So it's almost like Firefly. You guys know Firefly, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's almost like that spaghetti sci-fi western type where, yes, there's technology. Yes, there's some advanced technology, but a lot of it's sort of backslid. And so you have kind of I would say it's almost like in the Foundation series. So after Trantor, maybe 200 years before the fall, if that reference. So kind of where technology's kind of stagnated and decayed, but it's not quite to the point of the Great Sack, but it's getting there. That's kind of that visual period. So you still have these military ships, but you can't build bigger ones because you've lost the technology. You know, you can't, your weapons are basically relics compared to what they were in the Terran Federation days. So everything is kind of, even though it's the future, things have kind of backslid, and you essentially have to rediscover a lot of that lost technology. And that's where you have the houses have kind of crept up, and now you have, almost baronies in space because the Celestial Empire, the emperors have gotten weaker and weaker and weaker over time, allowing the Great Houses to get stronger to the point where they're almost a proxy kingdom.
Yeah. So is there an overarching like emperor, and you're not it?
No, you are the emperor. You are the overarching emperor. You lead the ruling house. So there's 6 houses in the empire. There's your ruling house, and then there's 5 great houses.
Gotcha. And those houses kind of squabble with each other, and you got to keep them chill, or what?
Exactly. Yes, they do squabble with each other. They squabble with you. They try to kill each other. They expand, and that's where it's kind of that there's that tug of, it's my empire. These are my houses. I mean, I don't own the houses, but they do swear fealty to me. But they're not. Many of them are not very happy about it. And some are. Some you do have a good relationship with. And again, it depends on the game. Similar cultures tend to get along a lot better. But
so do the houses have a personality that?
Oh yes,
it's kind of like every game. It's consistent. It's not like it randomly puts like, oh, this time that guy's a douche, but last time
like Shirley Finn is kind of the science house. So they're what's called a technic culture. So they'll always have a lot of academies, but they'll have almost no military. They're not good at growing food. They're not really good at economics, but they're really good at high tech, which is important because energy is a big part of the game. And then obviously having your science points generated. So, a big part of it is in kind of that whole empire thing. So I'll just use the science system as an example. So you generate science points throughout your empire, and they're generated that are staffed by academics. And so you get X amount of science points. Well, the thing is, the better relationship you have with a house, the more science points they will send to you, essentially. But if you have a poor relationship with a house, they may not send you any of their science points. So if, let's say, Kirley Finn, they have 50 science points, and you can only produce 10 because you're a military house, you as the player house. If you piss them off, or if your relationship drops, or if you go to war, they'll cut off their science. So you won't have access to it. And so your science output will be almost nil. So you either have to start building it yourself, or you have to find another house that has, similar science skill or almost as good science skill, and improve their relationship and get them on board with improving their science infrastructure. So, if science is important to you and you can't rebuild it, then you better keep Curly feeling happy, and you better do anything you can to make that happen. And that's a real difference from a 4X, where just everything is kind of there and it's all homogenous, and there's no sense of, I can't piss off this area of my empire or else I'm not going to get the resources.
Right.
But that's very entirely possible. In fact, that's a major part of the game.
Is there like some gunboat diplomacy where you don't actually have to fight your own people, but if you park some battleships off their border, then they get the message? Thing?
Oh yeah. There's intimidation. You can send the battle. We call them forces. You can send the battle force over the system capital or house capital if you know you're going to be negotiating with somebody, and you can actually intimidate them, and the game will actually show you your combat score. And that's a big part of, if you really want to do that, it'll piss them off, and your fear level will go up, throughout your empire. You have a popular support level and a fear level. And that's kind of like ruling the rebel way versus the empire way, the imperial empire. And, you can do those things that are kind of strong arming, intimidating, military-ish, but that will cause your population to fear you, and fear support drops much quicker than popular support, whereas you're actually feeding your people and treating them right. So you can also, there's a claim system that's fairly complex in the sense that you don't, normally most 4X games, you see a system. What do? You just send a scout, you go scout it, and then you go send a colony ship, and it's yours, and that's it, right? Right, like 99% of 4X is out there.
Yeah,
which to me that always seemed incredibly simplistic. So in Alliance, what you do, first of all, you still scout a system. Very important too, by the way, because colonies are huge undertakings. They're not, if you screw up on the placement, anyway. So
and they should be huge undertakings. They should be massive undertakings.
They should be, but in so many games, it's not. You just here's your colony ship, go get them, boom, new colony. And then you have to claim the system. So you have a claim either by your influence, which kind of radiates out from your systems, depending on what you already have there. Like if you have a system you've got multiple planets and outposts or whatnot, then you'll have a lot of influence. But each house has its own amount of influence. So, or if you don't have enough influence, you can send a battle fleet to that system to kind of be that gunboat diplomacy. So at that point, you then claim or you can build an outpost. Outposts also add influence to a system, and outposts don't actually need a claim to be built. So once you are ready to claim a system, once you have enough influence or feel like you can claim the system, you initiate a claim system project. When that project concludes, if you have the most influence, you then claim the system. At that point, you can then colonize. Colony is a major project. It creates a system capital if it's a new system, or a province capital if it's a new constellation. And then here's the really funny part. Building a colony does not guarantee that anyone will actually show up. If you put it way too far out, like if you build it out in the back beyond, and you put it on like a lava planet or just a nasty planet in general, there's no guarantee that colonists are going to come out there.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
really
great. That's great.
Because pops have their own AI and they have their own agenda. And if you have everyone in your empire is happy, their pops have individual planet happiness. They have individual, whether they're employed or not. They have a unrest level. It's very detailed. So if you build a shitty colony, pardon my French, then no one can show up. And that's just the reality. And I've had to, now if you build it on a nice planet and it's near the center of the empire, you build jobs, and all things being equal, people want to come for new opportunities. But you can't just build, because I'll build a new colony in the middle of my house, my rival house, and it'll pull all their people. And that can work if the colony you're building is fantastic and you got a great viceroy in there. But if you build on a lava or barren planet or greenhouse planet, and you put a viceroy there that's kind of a hole, which is a thing in the game, pops can fear or love a viceroy, then hardly anyone's going to come, and you're basically going to have this huge outlay on your expenses for nothing.
That is wonderful because so many games like, oh, I built a colony ship. People are just there, and they're happy or they're not. Like there's a difference between abstraction and just laziness, I think, in a lot of these games. And it's really nice to know that that's a thing that could happen. That's in your game. You can build a colony, you can lay out all this money for it, all this time, all these action points, blah, 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 and no one will come to it.
Yep. And I mean, and you'll have a clue. Your vizier will tell you when you build the project, they'll say, your majesty, this may not be the right place to build, because you'll be able to know if pops are happy around there, because that's where you're pulling your population from. They don't just grow out of the ground. So if everyone's happy in that system or in the systems around, nobody wants to leave, then that's probably not the right place to build it. So you won't be going completely, but it's just use common sense. Build a colony on a nice planet that has good resources, that's near other planets where there aren't enough jobs or where people aren't happy, and you will have absolutely no problem having colonists come flocking to your planet. Oh, and don't put an a-hole in charge. You do those things, it's easy. But like you said, I like that it's not taken for granted, and you can't just, the idea of finding the right planet should be a thing. It shouldn't just, in this game, you may not colonize more than 5 or 6 planets because you want to pick the right one. Now, you may build a bunch of outposts. Outposts are a lot less important. People will come because there's jobs no matter what. But for colonies, and kind of you just said it, they should be a huge thing. Like building a colony should be one of the biggest things you do as an empire in any 4X, because it represents a culmination of so many technologies and just things you do. Like I remember playing Galactic Civilizations, and I think it was 3. And then when you colonize a planet, you got this cool video, like, you have finally reached beyond the stars, and your culture has reached beyond, and we now settle a new adventure. Like it felt, and it had, big, high, heavy music and, orchestral swelling. It's like, yes, that's how it should feel. It's a big deal. Even though you pretty much only had to do the same thing, build a colony ship and send it. But it felt like a big thing. So that's kind of what you should feel. And I just saw someone, you may not colonize, take my money, please give it to us. We have a Kickstarter. But I mean, that's another thing too. I despise micromanaging 40 planets because computer will do a job as I do. But if I have each house may only have 5 or 6 planets, but they're very detailed. They're detailed. All the pops are very detailed, as we've talked about. They have regions that have their own type of fauna and defense and what's built there. And it's just we often make planets very detailed because that's the foundation of the economy and of the movement of pops and what have you. So planets themselves are I would wager our planets are more detailed than any other 4X out there. That's not like obviously Emperor of the Fading Sun's different because you're fighting on the planet and you're moving your forces. But as far as just abstracted planets, I will give money that Alliance's planets are more detailed than any other game out there.
I believe it, because you're not only dealing with those particular planets, but like the people on those planets. Like each of those planets, they might have, what is it, a governor, I think?
Yeah, viceroy.
Yeah, viceroy. So it's like, planets aren't just a collection of pops and buildings. Like they have a leader, they have needs, they have,
Yeah. So how much control do you have over the planetary government? Can you like reach in and fire governors and stuff, or?
Yes and no. That's a great question. So if it's so the planets are called holdings. So each house has their own holdings. So even though, again, you have an empire, you don't control directly all the planets, which further reduces micromanagement. So if it's your own holding, you have pretty much free reign. You can reach into the planet level. You can tell the viceroy, hey, I want you to change production. I want you to have more, academics training in our academies. I want to increase production levels. I want to, I want to increase trade. I want to increase our retail. There is a comprehensive retail system in the game. But anyway, so you can do that if it's your planet. But if it's someone else's holding, It's entirely up to the viceroy to decide that. You can't just say, hey, I need you to ramp up the retail level. It has to be in their house's best interest and in their viceroy's best interest. Now, if your power is 60 and their power is 8, they're going to do it just because you're so much more powerful than them and you have that influence. But if your power is 20 and theirs is 25, then they're going to be like, nah, and especially if you're not friends, like, nah, I don't want to do that. And then, of course, the house relationship matters as well. That kind of plays a part. But essentially, you cannot fire someone else's viceroy. You can exile them. You can have them assassinated. You can scare them. You can intimidate them enough to leave the post. But you cannot just flat out fire them like you can for your holdings. You can ask the house leader to remove them and replace them with someone of your choice. But again, that's a request. They can deny that.
But can you assassinate them?
You absolutely can. Well, you can try. You have your squads, which are basically your dread squads. And essentially they do your dirty business. They do your spying and they do your black ops. You can only have a very small number. And the more Inquisitor squads you have roaming around your empire, the higher your fear level goes. So, but they are super, super handy to have.
That all sounds incredible. Like, yeah, I played for an hour yesterday and I didn't even get into that spy stuff. I was just like, I'm gonna get to know you, and I'm gonna get to know you, and I'm gonna get to know you. I just want to have little tea parties with everybody, and I love how that's a thing you can do.
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
No, after you.
Well, I'm just saying. Sorry, I get really excited when I talk about the game because it's a lot
that you should, and that's why we like having you back because it's infectious. So please get excited about your game.
That's what I do. No, you can actually, let's say you have someone that just doesn't want to deal with you in any way. You can have an intransigent house leader. Someone that's pretty powerful and can basically tell you no. You can actually help their friends. There's another level. So, there's multi-level relationships. So let's say they have a friend who's also a house leader that you are in better terms with. And let's say you heal them. It's something you can do in the game. You can actually heal characters that are dying, cost you money out of your treasury, but you can do that. That's a big deal. Their house will appreciate it, but their friends will appreciate it as well. And that will improve your relationship with this person, even though you may be not directly able to do anything positive. You can also hurt their enemies. If you exile one of their enemies or challenge them or insult them or do something negative, a hostile action, then they will also like you better, essentially. So, you have to think on multiple levels too, because you think, well, if I give someone a post on the Celestial Council, which is a big deal, it's like basically like the cabinet of the U.S. and it's very prestigious. But if I give someone that seat, then their enemies are going to hate me a lot more. And I had a situation in one of the games I played earlier where I was trying to make nice with the house leader, and I was about to promote them to the council. So I was trying to get them to the next level of friendship, but I looked at their relationship tab and I noticed that their worst enemy was the leader of House Waldegrave, which I was trying to keep off my back. And if I had put them on the council seat without checking that, House Waldegrave, their house leader probably would have dropped all the way to a vengeance rating or a vendetta, which is very low, and basically probably taking their house with them. So it's just things you have to consider. We were already kind of on pretty shaky terms. It's not like you go from friends to enemies just like that. It takes time, but it's something that you have to consider. So you make a big move, you have to look at not just the immediate effects, but is this going to piss somebody off that I really would? In that case, I ended up not promoting her because I didn't want to deal with Waldegrave on my back. I promoted someone else completely different. So that's that level of strategy that, we hope is fun and that people kind of say, this is really a people simulator. You're simulating your empire and the personalities within it and keeping them happy.
Yeah, people love that kind of stuff. And Ares, which is funny about the name, Ares brings up a good question. Like, he asked if you already discussed war and combat. And I was going to lead into that. Like, you're talking about, like, what if you have this house that hates you so much they just like flat out declare whatever. Is it war? Would it be war even though you're in the same empire? Would they like secede and declare war?
Yeah, it's not war. It's actually called challenges. So you have kind of a ritualized combat. In the 31st century, the idea being that humanity's kind of fallen pretty far. And so having internecine wars would kind of end up probably wiping out all humanity. So part of the empire, you have actually these ritualized combats between houses. You have to issue a house challenge, just like you can issue a personal challenge. You have a house challenge, and you can challenge an honor challenge, which basically is an honor, a challenge for a certain amount of power, or a territory challenge, which is basically you saying, I want that system or I want that province. And you go and you essentially go to war for it. And so in that respect, you issue a challenge. You what type of challenge? You bid for a certain war score if it's an honor challenge. Otherwise, a territory challenge is the amount, whatever you're trying to take over. And then you basically fight, and you do fight. And it's very, you have your own forces, and that's an area of the game that we're kind of taking a second pass at, because we don't want the game to be too micro. Because the idea is you're the emperor. I've never understood why you would sit there and be designing ships from scratch and writing in slots into ships and blueprints. Like, what the hell?
And you're not an admiral either. So, but you're moving your forces around a map. It's like, God, I hate that.
Yep. So the idea is, you have, when you build a force and you build ships. So when you build ship, let's say a destroyer, you build a destroyer, and it's basically just a stock destroyer. It's just, there's no role for it. You can then create forces that are specialized. So you say to your war prime, because your war prime's who's actually doing this, I want a combat force. And you have templates that you choose. And you can choose the template. So it could have, say, 2 command destroyers, 3 combat destroyers, 2 scout frigates, 1 supply frigate, and a cutter for recon. And you have these templates that you choose, and then the ships that you built will then be put into that role. They'll essentially be kitted into these different roles. And there's roles for combat, scouting, interdiction, planet bombing, terror, command, because you have to have a certain amount of command points to perform well. And then, but you don't do any of that. All you do is say, I want this type of force. And as long as you have the ships for it, your war prime will pull that force together and kit them out automatically. So, and then you send those forces. Well, let's say you want to attack a system. You just go to the military command mode, and you go to the military overlay, and you say, I want to attack that system. You'll get you saw it in the tutorial. You'll get a menu of options. You can bombard, attack, terrorize, whatever. And here's the cool part. Again, your war prime is doing all this, not you. So if you have not declared war, a challenge against that house, if you're just saying, screw it, I just want to attack this house and do it without honor, your war prime may refuse to do it. Your war prime may also refuse to attack if it's their house. If you're attacking the house of your war prime, they're like, I'm not doing that. So then you have a decision to make. Do I go do something different, or do I sack my war prime? And then all the repercussions that come from that. So your war prime is autonomous and has the ability to tell you, no, I'm not doing that. That's an atrocity. That's not honorable, or that's my house, and you're not going to do that. So, but for your war prime agrees. They give you the odds. You select a level of commitment, and then you basically, from there, the war prime takes over. They send the forces that are needed. They pull, if there's transports, they pull the troops. As long as you've got them built, they'll put them on transports, send them to the planet. You'll get a pop-up that says, we've arrived. This is the force level. This is what we expect to happen. Do you wish to call off the attack? Yes or no? And if you say no, then they go in and you get the results. And then you can decide to either retreat or, press the attack, or if it's a planet invasion, go ahead and invade. So it's a fairly complex system. What we want to make sure, though, is that it's still fun for players, and that it's not too hands-off. So what we've toyed with is the idea of a war plan, where when you're creating the plan, say, to attack a system, you can say, okay, I want these planets attacked. I want to use these forces. I want this admiral leading, and we'll actually have an idea of a task force where you can have multiple forces there. So we haven't put that in yet, but that's kind of on the table. We're in the process of designing that. But right now, what you see, well, actually that's a sit rep, but yeah. So but it's nice because you can just say, I want this planet, and or I want this system, take it over, and your war prime will do everything else. And you'll have points along the way where your war prime's like, are you sure you want to continue, or this is what's happening, or something's come up. And that's what an emperor would do. An emperor wouldn't be involved in all the intricate war planning. I want this, I want this ship and this ship and this ship, and I want them outfitted with like super laser guns, and this one needs to have a bomber Mark II. And I mean, it's too much. So it's just not that kind of game. Our ultimate goal, you should be able to play 80% of the game from the province or galaxy level, through your houses or through your prime. So a lot of people like the system. Some people felt like it didn't give you quite enough choice in, what force. Like if I just built a cool new force, new attack force, like a medium-sized attack force, I want to be able to say, I want that force to go. So we're just trying to kind of say, okay, you'll have some choice in what forces and what targets, but we still want the war prime to do the majority of that. Yeah, here on the screen now, this kind of shows you won't see the offense, but on defense, it basically just, you click select, you say how much you want, and see where it says recommended, your war prime will tell you whether or not it's recommended. So you'll have that advice as well. So that's essentially the military system. And then when you invade a planet, your forces are dropped. They're kind of airdropped. You can research technologies to improve the chances of their survival. They get dropped into a region, and then combat is conducted region by region. Each army has up to 3 move points, which means they can move 3 regions per turn. Turns are 3 months long. They fight the local forces if there's no armies, or they fight armies that are there. Each region may have a local defense that they have to fight, and then each region has a control points from 0 to 25. And so when you reach 25 control, you take over that region. When you take over half the control points on a planet, you then essentially control the planet. I'm simplifying a lot, but that's the gist of it.
Aries again asks in the chat, can the houses go at war with each other?
Yes, they do. Now the AI is not very robust in that sense, but yes, the plan is ultimately, yes, houses will go to war with each other. War meaning they will challenge each other essentially. So yes.
So before you get into a war, do you have to kind of declare like these are the victory conditions?
Yes.
Like this is the terms that I'm about to go to war for.
Yes.
And, okay.
For a go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because that's the thing that it's like I'm going to war until you comply with whatever, or you give me this, or whatever, because that way wars aren't just open-ended, like, hey, we're in, we don't know how we get out, and whatever, right? So if the 2 parties involved have goals at the onset, it's like, well, whoever achieves their victory condition, that way wars aren't just let me see how far into your territory I can push and how much I can devastate your stuff, and then I keep what I kill.
Yeah. No, we use kind of the war score system. I'm sure y'all are familiar with Europa Universalis, Hearts of Iron, etc. So you have the idea of a war score. So for a territory challenge, you just have to take the territory that you're trying to target. So think of it as a casus belli for that specific. If you want to put it in these terms, you have a casus belli on a specific system or province or planet, and you're only fighting for that planet. So and you make that clear. Now, on an honor challenge, you bid a certain amount of war score. Like you can bid anywhere from 10 up to the maximum war score that you have, and that's determined essentially by your holdings plus your military. And that war score, let's say you bid 20, so that you bid 3 times your war score. That's the amount of power that is at stake, essentially your house power. If you look at the upper left-hand corner where it says 844 on the screen, that is your house power. And a big part of winning the game is your house power has to be 5 times greater than every other house combined. And that includes, houses that are subjugated or vassalized. So you include your power in that. So power is really important. So in that case, I have war score of 20. So I just have to conquer 20 points worth of war score before they do. War score is gained by conquering systems, planets, destroying other, armies, destroying other units, trashing system defenses. Anything you do on a military scale earns a certain war score. They're also earning war score. So, you could have a war where you took a planet, but you trashed so much of your army in your navy to do it that the war score is essentially evened out. So you can't have Pyrrhic victories in that case. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Now what about like population happiness as affected by war score stuff? Like, do you ever get your own people like push back, like, hey, that's enough war, like?
Yes, well, you have fear. Yeah, you do. You have fear, and each culture will react slightly differently. So a Spartan culture will be less unhappy about war; they'll actually be okay with it. But other cultures in your empire will generally not like it. And then you also have what's called devastation. So on a planet, as you're taking it over, you have a devastation rating. And so the higher the devastation, basically the harder you fight over the planet, the more forces it takes. If you bomb the planet, orbital kinetic strikes, etc., you're devastating the planet, and that also creates fear throughout your empire.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's cool. Because you end up with a mix where you have different personalities of houses that you're dealing with. So, like the Spartan people, maybe they respect being shown power more so than like the like capitalist dudes that you can just go in and buy.
Absolutely. Yeah, like traditionalists would be horrified. Gilded worlds would be horrified because they're all about kind of the administration and sort of being very ethereal. But yeah, your warlike cultures will be okay with that because that's what they know, and their cultures are okay with using that as a strategy. So, and that's why the culture aspect has been kind of talked down. But your house is your empire is made up of these 6 disparate cultures, and each house represents a culture. And they have their own traditions. We talked earlier about how certain houses are good at certain things, not good at certain things. That all stems from their culture. So you can kind of get to know, as you know these houses, how they're going to react when you do certain things.
So there is a bit of predictability in the houses, but like not like just in maybe how they'll react to things, but like there's still a lot of variability as well.
Oh yeah. Well, the houses, because there's currently 12 great houses. And we're going to expand that to 20. And then plus we have a Kickstarter. That's one of the tiers. You can actually create your own great house. So depending on how many people sign up for that, we may have as many as 30 great houses. And those will be auto rolled in every game. So you may have 6 completely different or 5 completely different great houses every game. So you have, 3 Spartak houses and 3 Technic houses and 3 what we call Neo-American houses, which are kind of generic, the quote unquote balanced human culture. And they have mercantile, gilded world. So each house, there'll be several houses that correspond to that culture, but each culture will be represented in the game. So if you're Spartak, there'll be no more than one other Spartak culture representing the other houses. You can never have more than 2 Spartak houses or Technic houses or whatever. Because the idea is that the empire is a polyglot of cultures and people. And so that dynamic is represented.
Yeah. Does it kind of balance the cultures out? Like if you have the leaders intermarry or whatever? Because marriage has been a tool in a lot of the civilization stuff. So
yeah, right now marriage is not. It's something you can't really do. It's something because people are like, oh, it's Crusader King. You should have all these lines of succession. Well, the thing is, the scope is only you. If you die, you get the game over screen. There's no heir. There's no line of succession. That's it. So
you don't have a dynasty. You are the dynasty.
You are the dynasty. Yeah, you're it. You're the last child. I mean, you're it. You have no heir. So, the whole idea of primogeniture and all that is not really a part of this game. It's not in that respect. It's definitely not like Crusader Kings. You can't marry. You can't marry other houses, and that's where I think Stellar Empires, that kind of game, is a little bit more, or Star Dynasties is a little bit more. That's more what that game is trying to do. There, you do have dynasties, you do have intermarriage, things like that. Alliance is really more about the character relationship vis-a-vis the Emperor and the strategy and kind of growing your empire and facing this existential threat.
Right. So you have to you have to drag the entire empire forward.
Exactly. That's actually an excellent way of doing it. And you're not doing it from a position of strength. And that's the kind of the conceit of the game is you're not this all powerful emperor. You're mortal. You're a kid. You just got your rule and everyone's kind of like, I don't know. I don't really trust this guy or this girl. So you're already kind of starting with one hand behind your back. Again, every other 4X game, what do? You plop at the beginning of you got a planet with a scout ship and a transport and you're already plopped into a fully functioning empire that's been around for centuries with all the history and what's happened in that. So think of it as like a little bit of Dwarf Fortress where all this has kind of been created. It's not to that level. I don't want to mislead. It's definitely not that complex, but there is a history that's been generated in your houses and your characters and your planets and your systems all have that history. So it's kind of different there. I do see a question, how many different cultures are all in there? There's actually 6 cultures currently. Those are called your core cultures. There's Spartic, there is Neo-American, there is Technic, there is Gilded Worlds, there is Mercantile, and Traditionalist. So, and as we get the game towards a full release, we're going to add 6 additional cultures for the middle ring and then 6 cultures for the outer ring. So there'll be 18 cultures in the game total when it's released as a full release.
You'll only have to deal with 5 at a time because there's 6 houses in a game. Correct. Basically.
Correct. Yeah, your house culture will always be the one you pick when you set it up, and then the other 5 will be varied depending on yours. So you'll never have more than one other culture that matches what you picked.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like there's going to be it sounds like this game's going to have a lot of legs, basically.
I hope so. The idea that the culture, your empire changes so dramatically every playthrough. Because you look at it, if you didn't know, you're like, oh, you're always starting in Constellation Gnosis, and you're always on Osiris and New Terra, but the empire around you will change dramatically. I've had 3 different games that I've done on my streams. I've had 3 completely different problems. One, I was running out of energy. One, I didn't have any administrative capacity. I only had like 105, so I couldn't really do any projects. And one, my economy was very, very poor, and I had a terrible viceroy leading my New Terra, which is like my economic powerhouse. So, every playthrough, you'll have different challenges that you have to overcome to kind of get your empire back off its legs.
I mean, it just all sounds really awesome, and I do want to pivot now into the Kickstarter because we've touched on it a little bit, but I want to talk. Oh my god, I'm sorry. I don't know if you can hear that. My cat is. Yeah, my cat's not happy right now. It's about feeding. It's about fooding time, and she expects. She really expects to be fed now.
She demands service.
I understand. I have cats in my house. I get
it. Excuse me. So you're now about halfway through your Kickstarter. Damn it.
There should be a game that's like a space empire thing, except you're like the Martians from Master of Orion, and you just have like pet humans that have to feed you.
That's funny.
Well, there's a lot of engines out there for you to make that game.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask. Your Kickstarter is Kickstarter's a rough thing, and I feel for anyone trying to do one because so many of them have this same pattern. You start strong, and there's a medium hump, and then people like for the last week, like, oh yeah, that I wanted to back that, and it's really stressful for the last few days.
Right. Yeah, we're actually about we're a little over a third of the way through it. We're closing in on 30%. I mean, we're not doing terribly, but yeah, it's like you said, we had a really strong start. One thing I didn't realize, I did some research. A friend of mine pointed this out that done a Kickstarter, and I didn't realize this until literally today. 4X Games have a terrible history on Kickstarter. Apparently, there have been quite a few, I guess, high promise, low delivery type projects over the last several years. Particular genre, and yeah, so I don't know if that's had an effect, but I did some reading. Yes, there have been quite a bit of ambitious projects that have kind of met in a timely end, and I get it. Yeah. And that's why we're doing so many streams. I do 3 to 4 streams a week. We make no bones about the game. I mean, the game is playable. I mean, you said yourself, you played it for hours. It's rough. I mean, obviously it's got bugs, but it's playable. I mean, you can play for hours.
Playable. Yeah, it's very playable. Yeah, absolutely.
So, we're not trying to pull the wool saying, wow, this great game. Like, we have this theory where we can make this game and we have a few screenshots and art. Like, no, it's a thing. Like, you can play it. You can play it today. but here's some things we want to do with it. We want to expand it. We want to add more tooltips. We want to improve the tutorial. We want to make, cut the bugs, stability, improve the UI. I mean, there's things we want to do, and it will take, 7-8 months, which we made clear on the Kickstarter. And what's neat about it is we've only had 2 people actually cancel their pledge. I think we're up to 240 something pledges.
What? Why?
Do what?
Why did people cancel their pledge?
People do it. I mean, that's really low. That's what my point, though. That's super low. Typically, a project can have up to 5 to 10% cancellations. So we've been extremely stable as far as that goes. But right now, yeah, we're kind of hitting that wall. We're trying to get the word out with streamers. Thank you guys for having us on, because you guys have been kind of a friend of the court since a long time ago. But it's like people hear about the game and they're like, oh, that sounds really cool. I wish I'd heard about that sooner. But we don't have, we're not a big studio. We don't have a marketing arm, and it's really just word of mouth. And so we, it's we're below where we want to be. We're not terribly below, but we're lower than we want it to be, but we're still, within range of making it happen. But, we just need people. If you like what you see, if you're watching the stream and you're like, that game sounds amazing, that is the game we're going to make. I want to make that clear. We're not shooting for the stars. These aren't things that we can't do. I mean, this is all basically in the game already. It's just kind of tweaking and balancing and adding some functionality, but the game can be made. And it will be made. I mean, it will be made if it takes me 10 years. But we want it not to take as long. So, if you like what you see, tell people. Just back it. Tell other people about it. But we will make the game. You don't have to worry about us disappearing in obscurity.
Well, I mean, I know you will make it, because you've been working on it so long now. You have to see it through. I know this.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, folks, if you could, there are links in the chat. There are links on the stream pages. There's going to be links in the show notes for the podcast. If you could back the game on Kickstarter, I'm looking at the camera, even though it's not on. I do that during my streams. I'm so used to looking at the camera.
The fireplace behind you, yes.
What was that?
We see, in my mind's eye, I see you with a fireplace behind you and a pipe in your mouth.
Yeah, welcome to Masterpiece Theater. Today we're going to talk about yeah, friends, if you could head to Kickstarter and check out the game. This game's been one we've had our eye on for a long time. And wait, Kickstarter has notorious problems if you want to back from another country. Oh, yeah, I guess it's true. Yeah, sorry, Thorsten.
It was a lot friendlier, but Kickstarter is kind of more of a known, we kind of went back and forth with Kickstarter. It was actually a much better platform, and they're very international. But at the end of the day, we knew Kickstarter, they're based in the U.S., and they have an overall, just stronger reputation. They've been around longer. So,
I
definitely other countries.
Oh, thanks, Ponicus. Got a backer right there. Thank you, Ponicus.
Need a ching sound effect or something. I do thank all of our backers individually when we have our streams. So if you back, within the next stream, I actually call out your name and thank you, because I think it's important to.
It's very important. That's great.
Every pledge, whether it's $5 or 500, is just as important. And that's someone that thinks positively of the game. So it's just something we do.
Yeah, there are other. I think you did right choosing Kickstarter, because I've seen other games try to do like Indiegogo, and there was a high profile game that went to Fig, and I'm not going to say which game it is, but they ran a terrible campaign. And being on Fig didn't help them, because, I mean, how many games have you done on Fig? How many games have you backed on Fig?
None.
I think I've
backed a few.
I've backed like one or two. I think the most successful one was Homeworld. They did Fig, I think, for Homeworld 3, and that did well. But it's Homeworld, for God's sakes. I mean, they could have gone anywhere. And they would have done fine. But there are a couple of projects I've seen recently on Indiegogo. It's like, oh no. Yes, Ponicus, I believe Wasteland 3 was the first big FIG game. I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. And Jeff, yes, you're right about the one. I don't want to say it, but you're right about the one that I was thinking of, the terrible campaign. I just don't want to say it out loud myself. So Kickstarter is. I feel for anyone who tries to do a Kickstarter, because there's also a fatigue around Kickstarter. Where there have been so many projects, and there have been a lot of successful ones, but yeah, there have been some really, really high profile failures, and it's a little. I'm sure it's scary to put yourself out there like this.
Well, it is, and I've been talking to people that have gone through Kickstarters. Jeff actually being one of them. And, he's given me some really good advice about kind of not getting too high or too low, because we're still in range. It's not like we need $30,000. We're closing in on 8,000 and we're a little over a third of the way. So we're not just at 5% with 10 days to go or something crazy. But yeah, it is a little nervous to kind of see that curve flatten out. We actually had a good day yesterday. And I think if we can just get the word out, it just takes one. And I appreciate, who said Nomadic Jam. Thank you. Post a link on your Discord. Just anything you can do, even if it's just, hey, someone was going to post on Something Awful, on the Something Awful forum, which is a huge community. And
that's a huge community.
Love this game. And just it's like, hey, I found this game. I think you guys might like it. Something like that could drive a whole lot of traffic. And then it takes only one person that saw that to say, you know what, I want to stream that game. I've got 25,000 people on my stream and I'd like to feature your game. So that's how the word of mouth happens. So it's not, obviously a pledge would be great, but if you can't do that, just spreading the word. If you really like what you see and you can speak to it with passion, because we can't go on. I can go on a forum, or I can go on a Reddit or whatever, but I'm not part of that community. I can just pop on a forum and say, hey, I've got a game, but most forums don't like that self-promotion. So, but if you're part of that community, they know you, and you've built the rapport, and then you're like, hey, I saw this game. Now you're kind of a trusted voice, and now that has a lot more weight than the developer just popping in to essentially drop a press release. So, that really helps us, in the absence of a pledge or in conjunction with a pledge. But if you can't pledge, I totally understand. It's the holidays, coronavirus, economy. I totally get it.
Yeah.
But just telling people about us would be worth a tremendous amount. Literally, because it just takes one person to catch fire about the game, and then tell so many others. So, we're grateful for any press we can get, hopefully positive. But any way we can get the word out. We're working on our end too. I'm reaching out to game magazines and streamers and websites and things like that. So we're not just asking everyone to go out and do our work for us, but we definitely would help us in addition to what we're doing.
People do want to know if the Kickstarter doesn't work out, and we all hope it does, of course. But if it doesn't, will you consider going into early access on Steam, which of course has its own sordid history, but it can be successful if done right.
That's a complicated question. The answer is we've considered it, and we have a significant number of wish lists. I mean, it's not minimal because we've had it on Steam for over a year. So if we dropped it on Steam Early Access, even as it is today, we would probably make a decent amount of money on it. That being said, I've always been a strong believer in an early access product being as polished and professional as possible. I know there are some developers that drop it on early access basically to fund it, and that's their funding source is early access. And I'm not here to judge those people because I'm not in their shoes.
I'll judge them. I'll totally judge them.
I'm not going because I understand. And look, if you have no other way and you've got a game you're working on and you've got something that you can, plop out there, what annoys me is when people use early access, and look, if you're going to use it, this is my taking off my developer's hat. This is just my opinion. When you use that platform as early access, you need to be crystal clear about, look, we know the game is not in the state that it's ready for full release. We know that. Here's our roadmap. Here's what we're going to do. It may take a year, but you need to know that you're getting a, badly in need of tender loving care and whatever features are missing. And that just needs to be made explicitly clear. And that's when I have a problem, when I see a game that is clearly like 40% done and it's not made explicitly clear in the early release notes or in the, so that sticks in my craw. But as long as you're honest and just say, look, this is what's missing. This is our roadmap. This is when we'll have X, feature in. This is when we'll have Y feature in. This is when we'll, have a beta. That I could get behind as long as they continue to keep the word and hit those milestones roughly. So again, milestones, they can slip. I'm well aware of that. But, just and also stay connected. So yes, that's a possibility. We really want to make the Kickstarter. That's really our plus. There might be other options open to us. Can't really talk about any of those, but there might be additional options, but those aren't, anything that's confirmed or guaranteed. But, we want to make this game, and the Kickstarter will be the best way for us to do that. I really don't want to put it on early access, unless there's just literally no other choice. And I would say that it'd be our absolute last resort. It would mean that we've exhausted every other opportunity, every other funding opportunity, every other opportunity of financing, and at this point, but at that point, we would make it very clear, look, this is our situation. To finish this game, we need to put it in early access. We need people to buy it so we can continue to work on it. So yes, does that answer your question?
Sorry. I'm still getting used to muting and unmuting my mic manually. Yeah, that does answer. I think that does answer the question very well, because again, it shows your passion about the project. You want to do what's absolute best for the game. And your answer shows that.
Well, thank you. I mean, and being on the other side, it's easy for people that don't make games to kind of throw stones and say, "Oh, this game's terrible." Why they just wanted to put a trash product. I believe that there are a few studios that just put trash because they don't care, but I think the vast majority of developers do intend to make a good game. I think they may get into water that's a little too deep for whatever reason, either development or programming or art or design or what have you. And then they just don't know how to get out of the water. And so rather than learning to swim, they just drown and they leave the project in whatever state it's in. So, and I don't think it's malicious. I don't think it's a money grab for most. I think it's just literally some studios, some individual developers bite off more than they can chew and they just don't see a way out. That's just my opinion.
And that makes total sense. And yeah, I mean, most developers really want to put out a good product, but it's so sad to go to Steam and be like, wow, that's a lot of garbage. That is so much garbage. Because there's so much garbage. But your game is not garbage. And so friends, we got to start wrapping it up. So the game is Alliance of the Sacred Sons. It is currently on Kickstarter and will be until January 3rd. There should be links in the streams, on the stream pages, but there'll also be links in the show notes of the actual MP3 when this goes out in a couple of days. So please do check it out. We've been fans of this game for a while. That's why we keep bringing Steve back, because we like this game. We like Steve. So we would love to bring him back at least one more time when this Kickstarter is successful and the game hits successful 1.0. That would be a great fourth appearance, y'all. So if you could help make that happen, that would be truly fantastic.
Can I use that as a quote? Can I put that on my Kickstarter? Space Age Junkie, it's 100% not garbage.
You can absolutely use that as a quote. Someone in the chat also said, you only colonize 4 or 5 planets in a game. That should also be a quote. Because planetary micromanagement is one thing I hate about Space 4X games. So you are absolutely right about that. I dig that so much. So yeah, again, guys, Alliance of the Sacred Sons. It's on Kickstarter. Please do check it out. We are not having a podcast next week because it's Christmas week, and so we're taking the week off. Ho 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 ho.
Wow. I'll just report we've gotten 8 new pledges. 7 new pledges. Stream began.
Oh, that's wonderful! Thank you, everybody.
Fantastic.
And I don't think it's coincidental.
Thank you, everybody. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So yeah, no podcast next week because it's Christmas week. Now I have a machine gun. Ho ho ho. And sorry, that was really stupid. It's your fault, Hunter. You did the ho 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 thing, and that's exactly.
But you know what? I'm telling you, man. You guys watch that. You watch that Die Hard stuff, and you're missing it because Invasion USA is the better Christmas movie.
Invasion USA, really? We'll have to look.
Yeah, man.
I'll have to track that down.
But Jim and I watched.
Search for YouTube the mall scene from Invasion USA.
Oh,
it happens. It's a Chuck Norris in a monster truck rampaging through a mall, killing terrorists at Christmas.
God.
Yes.
Oh God, that sounds amazing.
Yep.
But folks, we will be back in 2 weeks. We're going to have the developer of the Bridge Sim Starship Horizon on the show in a couple of weeks. And we're actually going to play the game as we talk because it's a internet bridge sim that multiple people can play at once, kind of like Artemis. Is it Artemis? Yeah, Artemis. And
does it do any other card games or just Bridge?
Captain's Log Supplemental. Doobie-doobie-doo. That's all.
Doobie-doobie-doo.
It'll be good to have him back on.
Phasers to sudden interest in botany setting.
Bit of a limp setting.
Did I leave the oven on setting? Folks, if you haven't seen the Eddie Izzard bit about Star Trek and the different phasers, different settings that phasers should have, go look it up on YouTube. It is one of the
why
funniest.
Haven't they let Eddie Izzard be Doctor Who yet? I don't understand.
He would be
a great question.
I don't know if they'd ever offer. I don't know if they would ever offer it to him. I don't know if they have or not. But he would be a wonderful Doctor Who. You're absolutely right. As long as he had good writers, that is the thing that plagues Doctor Who these days. Is they get great actors, not so great writers. So that's why Doctor Who, I think, is not so great these days. Because I mean, they had Peter Capaldi on there. He's such a good actor, and yet so many of his episodes
didn't do anything with him. Huh?
I mean, there were so few episodes that really utilized him. Like the one where the TARDIS was shrinking.
This was nothing against the actress, but I felt like they held on to the character of Clara for way too long.
Oh, way too long. They way too long.
After a period of time. And
it was like this. It was like the show was the Clara show. Oh, and here's the Doctor now. It's like, no, it's not the Clara show. This is not what I'm tuning in. Sorry. Anyway,
Space
Sorry,
Games.
folks. Space Games. So we'll see you back here for the podcast in 2 weeks. On Thursday night, are we doing on Thursday? Are we doing Dying Light? Spaz, is that what we're doing? I think.
Yeah, I think so.
So on Thursday afternoon for our weekly co-op session, we're going to be returning to Dying Light the following. And I think there's a buggy event going on right now that we should look into.
No, that's Cyberpunk.
No, I'm serious. I think the Dying Light is actually having a buggy event right now. So yeah, thank you so.
Oh,
Steve.
You mean like the car, not the feature set?
Yes. So, Steve, thank you so much for coming on again and talking to us and passionately telling us about your game. It's really great. Everyone, check out the Kickstarter. It's awesome. I'm clearly losing my mind, so we got to stop because I'm rambling now. But everyone, have a great day. Be safe. Be well. Take care of each other, and we'll see you back here for something. I don't know what, tomorrow at 6 a.m. It might be Shiren the Wanderer. For some reason, I got a copy of that. They sent me a copy of that. I didn't even ask for it, but they sent me a copy of that. So that might be what I stream tomorrow. Excellent roguelike if you all haven't played it. So we'll see you then, folks. Have a great night, and take care.